Private Practice. I am here with Janeen. She has a private practice called Puzzle Piece Counseling, where she works with individuals and families affected by autism. Janeen, thank you for being here.
Hey, Juan, thanks for having me.
You know what? Whenever I started, I was like, is it Puzzle Piece Counseling? Is that right?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But I know you use a EA, right?
Yes, it's spelled P-E-A-C-E, peace, on
Okay.
purpose, which I thought was a really cute play on words when I bought the domain name, and then I realized I had to buy both spellings in order for people to find me.
Okay, so you have both
So
domains now.
I do, yeah. So however you type in puzzle piece counseling, that'll bring you to me.
And that's probably like a nice samurai marketing strategy there to go ahead and buy any domain that's near yours.
Yes, exactly.
So I wanted to have you on here because I heard you on the Gordon Brewer podcast, and before we started recording today, I was sharing a little bit of my background, my family background with autism. My sister Diane, which I'm gonna give her a shout out because she is awesome. She can remember every Disney song, like
That's
word for
awesome.
word, which sounds awesome. But whenever you're like 12 years old, going from North Carolina to California to go to Disneyland, right?
Yep.
And your parents are like, this is my baby girl, so we're gonna have her pick every song.
Yep.
My brothers and I at some point are like, oh.
I know it. I can relate. My son can sing Disney songs, but he can also recite every line to almost every Blues Clues episode that ever was made.
I remember the Blues Day. Did he get into
Yeah.
Barney too?
Yeah, a little bit of Barney, but Blue has lasted through the years. He's 22 and he still loves it.
Nice. You can't go wrong
Yeah.
with Blues Clues.
You can't. It's classic.
There we go. So on here, I want to pick your brain. I want to pick your brain on how you got started in a private practice, because this is a counselor's journey to private practice. So start there. Tell us about your journey.
Sure. Well, I was very lucky in that I had a relationship with a doctor who was my son's autism specialist. She's a pediatrician and a functional medicine doctor here and she and I were working very closely to handle my son's time of going through puberty, which was really, really difficult. Behaviorally and health-wise, he has multiple autoimmune issues on top of his autism, which just make the autism worse in a lot of ways. So it was really difficult to deal with at that time. And during that time when he was in puberty, I was in grad school. So I remember going into her and just saying, you know, you've got everything in place for the kids, but nothing for the parents. And so I would love to be a part of that if you'll have me. And she basically said, let me know, when you're ready, when you graduate, I have an office for you here.
Nice.
So I started off in the back of her office and opened a private practice pretty much right out of grad school. Right after I was licensed, actually pre-licensed, because we had somebody on staff there that could oversee me. And then I took over the office suite next door. So it was just kind of a transition that felt like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Because I entered grad school knowing that I was going to specialize in private practice that helped autism parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I was going to ask, coming out of graduate school, a lot of individuals are not only fearful and nervous and, scared, I guess, of jumping into private practice, because sometimes you're all by yourself and it's like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Can I handle this? Can I actually help someone? But you did that. Where did that confidence, perseverance come from?
So I'm no different than anybody else just starting out. It was very scary. Felt like I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember a lot of times both my supervisor that I was working with, who was on site, and then the pediatrician that I mentioned, they would say, okay, we're going to send you this particular client next. And I would be scared and I would tell them, oh my gosh, can I do this? And they would just be my cheerleaders and say, yep, you can do this. And guess what? You don't have to do it alone. So we would work together. And I still work with that doctor in trying to figure out what are the best medications for the client, what are the best interventions and things like that. The more you do it, the more confident you get. But you just have to kind of be resigned to the fact that in the beginning, you don't have the experience yet. And so you have to rely on the experience of others to kind of help you along.
I love that. So being able to come out of grad school, have a strong support system,
Mhm.
who's going to be like that number one fan at the football games, holding that hand sign. You want a lot
Yes.
of those. And I guess you're also saying just be comfortable with saying, you know what? I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm worried.
Yes.
That's
And
okay.
that's something that I wasn't so good at before, because I mean, if there's one thing that being a mom, I have a son with autism. He's 22 and he's profoundly affected. So he has taught me how to not be a perfectionist. And perfectionism was something that I really struggled with. And what I've realized through the years of being a therapist is that actually would hinder my ability to be a good therapist. For
Hmm.
me to say to a client, I'm not really sure what we should do here, but let's figure it out together. Like, you're not alone in this. I'm not the expert and you're the person I'm teaching. I see us as a collaborative team,
Yes.
because they know their child best, and then I can just be that mirror and
Mhm.
that sounding board for them.
Absolutely. I think a lot of clinicians in grad school or experienced ones are going to relate to that. That reminds me of like sitting in a class and a professor, goes in to build a relationship with a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
being able to feel comfortable to see yourself on the same par as someone else. Whenever you
Yes.
built this relationship with the pediatrician, you went in there and you started your practice. How did I must be some of the clients must have came in through the pediatrician's office.
Correct.
What did you do in the community to make sure that people knew Janeen was here to help?
Yeah, great question. So I did a lot of research into how to grow a private practice, how to start it, and then how to scale it. Listening to people like yourself who specialize in that was great. And at the time, there really weren't a lot of people out there doing that work. So I started with Practice of the Practice with Joe Santa,
Yeah,
and he'll tell you, if you ask him about Janine, I was his very first fan ever. So I started listening to his podcast and thinking he's some famous guy, right? Podcasts back in 2008, 2009 weren't like a thing like they are now.
yeah,
And I remember emailing him and being like, hey, I need help with this. And he called me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like fangirling all over the place. And once I started my own podcast, he said to me, I hope you find your Janine and I hope you call them. And I did, like the first person that reached out to me. So it's kind of like I learned what I had to do, and then I'm paying it forward
yeah,
with my own work. So just making those connections. And what I love about the internet nowadays is that we can make connections with people all over the world
yes.
and learn from each other. And we're not in competition with each other.
Mm-mm.
There's plenty of people to go around. There's plenty of people that need help, and we can all really help each other with it.
I love that. I love that you connected with Joe. I started his podcast 2014, I think, when I was getting out of graduate school.
Mhm.
And I remember I would listen to it religiously,
Yeah.
like just over and over, just to ensure that I was doing things the right way. And I mean, it helped tremendously. Your
Yeah.
practice, is it cash based, insurance based?
It's cash based. I mean, we don't take any insurance up front, but we can provide super bills. I
Okay.
have an electronic health record that will, code everything, which is the smartest thing I ever did. It's so worth the money to have something that will do the coding and the invoicing and all that
Who
for
do you
you.
use for that?
I use Simple Practice.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Me too. I love their work. I'm not a sponsor or anything for them, but I use them as well. And I mean, it helps with super bills.
Yes. Oh, it absolutely does. Because I used to create them by hand and it would take just
Hmm.
forever.
Yeah. At the end of the day, your hand's like, oh, stop it.
Oh my gosh. I know. So there's so much that's worth investing in, and then there's other things that I think, as far as like bootstrapping, that you can kind of get away. I still don't have like a personal assistant, like
Okay.
Joe says to have. I feel like that's kind of my next frontier
Yeah.
that I'm going to do. But that's the control freak in me. I'm working on it.
Yeah, well, you and I, we relate on that one. My practice is owned by my wife and I, so she takes that role, but not like entirely where it's, someone who's 100% for that. And my thoughts are like yours, where I'm a control freak over certain things, but I've also been dabbling into a lot of automation. Like just
Yes.
thinking, yeah. And are you doing some of that too?
Yeah, automation is awesome. I'm using the Simple Practice feature where clients can go in and schedule their own
Yep.
sessions. And then the paperwork is pretty much automated.
Yep.
When I put in a new patient, just click a couple buttons and they're sent the paperwork. So yeah, that kind of stuff is awesome.
Here's a question with autism. From my experience, a lot of times individuals on the spectrum are going to have insurance. Maybe at an early age, get into like IEP, individualized education plan, or just something under where they're going through testing and then qualify for some sort of insurance like Medicaid.
Mhm.
How are you? How did you create the practice to still pull in those type of individuals who are able to pay out of pocket?
I guess the short answer is I didn't. I didn't create it based on those particular qualifiers. I
Hmm.
have clinicians that I can refer out to.
Okay.
So we don't do like traditional ABA behavioral
Hmm.
therapy. We do some social skills work. We do a lot of it one-on-one
Okay.
because we believe that a lot of the social skills programs out there are missing the mark as far as addressing the emotional regulation that goes into social skills.
Yes.
So social skills are often let's get a bunch of kids together and let's teach them how to interact with each other. But in a lot of ways, we're teaching them how to mask what's going on inside
Hmm.
so that they can be more socially acceptable. And we're trying to kind of balance that with, okay, this person has autism. We need to accept that about them, not hide it, and
Hmm.
help others understand how to deal with that. While at the same time teaching, say, a 14-year-old, hey, when you don't look at somebody's face when you're talking to them, they might think this or that. They might think you're not paying attention. They might think you're rude.
Hmm.
And then that child has the option of, do I want to just let them know ahead of time, or do I want to work on that? Um, but we do a lot of that. We do a lot of anxiety and depression
Okay.
in the kids, and a lot of anxiety, depression, and PTSD in the parents.
Yeah, tell me about that. I know that you're working with parents, which I think is often an area not looked at. I love that you had that conversation with a pediatrician. Myself, when I work with individuals on the autism spectrum, early on, it was mostly a phone call of, can you help my child? Can you help my son, my daughter?
Hmm.
And as things progressed, I think growing up in a house where my sister is on the spectrum, I not only saw how it impacted mom and dad, but also siblings. So my thoughts were
Yes.
always, I think everyone needs to be in this conversation. We all need to be here as a unit.
Yes, yes. And so we have a lot of families where we treat everybody in the family at some point or other,
Hmm.
where the mom and dad will come in for couples work and then the sibling will come in for their stuff.
Yeah.
Because everybody's dealing with their own issues surrounding it, whether it's their own pain or their own grief or their own, I don't understand this person that I live with.
Hmm.
So we do a lot of work around that.
I love that you're doing that. I do. I'll tell you. I'd give you a hug if I was near you. Virtual hug.
Yeah, or a fist bump because I'm a little congested. So
Oh, there we go. Yeah. I read that somebody put it on Facebook and they were like, now with the with the virus spreading, no shaking of patients' hands, no hugging patients.
yeah, yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting there. So it's a good precaution, but still interesting.
It is. And it's hard to teach my clients on the spectrum who are learning how to greet people, shake hands. Now we have to tell them that there's an exception to that rule.
Yeah.
And some of them are just like, their minds are blown.
Yeah. They're like, what are you doing? What's this
Yeah, like,
curveball?
you're messing this up for me.
What else have you done that connects to marketing? I kind of want to go into that a little bit.
Mhm. Sure.
Marketing to the clients that you serve as well as the parents.
Yeah. So, and this kind of gets back to your question before about how to serve populations that have insurance or can't private pay. I wanted to create a model so that I had free offerings for people that maybe couldn't afford one-on-one counseling and coaching. And so I started the podcast. It's called Autism Blueprint. And I made it specifically for parents and professionals because I think that professionals gain a lot of knowledge through empathy, through understanding what the family's going through.
Hmm.
For example, if we don't alert other professionals to the fact that these kiddos can get out of their houses, can wander off and not be able to keep themselves safe. You might have a clinician that calls Child Protective Services because the family's lost their child.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I mean, it's a case by case basis thing, but most of the time it's because these kids are really good at escaping.
Yeah, yeah,
And I know just as a parent, we've had 3 or 4 times where through my son's life, that we've had to call the police and we've had to have search and rescue teams. And, it's very scary. And
yes.
then to have to clean up that mess emotionally, you need a therapist that has that empathy, that understands. So from a marketing point of view, it's marketing, but it's marketing to a need, right? We're
Yeah.
not just marketing to market. We're marketing because we see the pain point.
Hmm.
So in Autism Blueprint, I started a private Facebook group where parents and professionals could join, and we have conversations about, what do you need the most help with? And then I base my episodes on what they need help with. If I
Hmm.
need to get in touch with a nutritionist and bring them in and talk about, maybe dietary changes or things like that, or um, I had a social skills specialist on one time, and then sometimes I'll just do shows that are just, me
Hmm.
talking about whatever topic people need help with. So this week it's probably going to be, how do we entertain our kids while we're all home together and not go crazy?
Yeah, that's a great subject. I love that. And I'll go back a little bit. I threw the term out marketing because I think law terms need to integrate into that business side of, starting and cultivating a private practice. But then, we need to go back to who we are. And I think most clinicians, we all hold hands when it comes to we are helpers, we are healers. We want to listen. I want to give you a hug so that you're able to know that I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And then we look at, okay, how does that connect to that thing called marketing? And I love that you created that podcast because you're not on there to make $1 billion or just to say things to say them so that people come see you. Like, you're giving your time, you're pulling in a nutritionist or all of these professionals, or just you on there to share messages, share words of advice. Because just like you and I, when we were listening to podcasts, it helped us. And
Hmm.
sometimes the people who do the episodes don't even know that, right? But
Right,
we know
right.
that we're receiving that help. And I think that's where, if counselors out there listening, if you're able to say, okay, what's your passion? What are you interested in? How do you want to help other people? And then integrate that business term marketing in there.
That's right. Absolutely, absolutely. So I found that when I was really trying to market just based on, I want to get more clients, it wouldn't be very successful. But when
Hmm.
it was completely authentic, like you were just describing, and I was helping somebody with a need, then people would call and be like, hey, I heard your podcast. Can you help me with this or that? So that's been good. And now I'm launching some online courses based on people that might have a little bit more money to spend, but not be able to do weekly counseling. So I'm trying to kind of hit all of the main areas where people need help and
Hmm.
at different price points so that everybody can get, pretty much the same information.
Yeah. So far listening, I kind of been able to step back and say, okay, here's a clinician who has diversified, right?
Mm,
She's been able to say, okay, I can work with a patient, the child, on the spectrum. I can help the parent or bring in staff that can help them through couples counseling, which, maybe that staff side, that's passive income. Then there's like
yes.
the podcast where you're looking at building a brand or market there. And then now the courses. How
Mhm.
far along are you in that journey with courses? There's a lot of clinicians that I'll speak to, and they're like, I want to do it. I just don't know how.
It's probably the scariest frontier that I've done yet. And now that I've this week, particularly because of this virus stuff going on, I'm staying out of the office this week just because I've had a cold and I don't really know what it is. So I'm just being safe and doing all of my appointments online. But I'm thinking this is the week that I probably launch it. And I'm going to stop being perfectionistic about it. And I've got 2 courses ready
Oh,
to go,
perfect.
one for newly diagnosed parents and one for one that's like a self-care course, for
Okay.
parents, how to take better care of themselves. So, I'm somebody that gets a little bit caught up in the details. Like, I'll take the courses on how to do a course until I've got it down just the way the person's taught me. And then when I'm ready to launch, I get cold feet. And then I have to kind of deal with and I'm just being
Yeah.
brutally honest,
Yeah. I love
there's,
it.
I haven't figured out any like secret to this other than I'm just going to have to do it. And it was another clinician that said, just it's better to put something out there than to put nothing out there
Mhm.
and, try to get it perfect, because it's not going to be. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. I have a camera guy that I hire that's helping with it, but you don't have to have a professional camera person. I just happened to run across this person and it worked out really well. um, I actually kind of bartered a little bit for his services, so that was good.
Yeah. Good job.
Yeah, so just opportunities that would come my way, I would just take advantage of them. But courses don't have to be fancy and they don't have to be long in order for you to make some money on it.
Absolutely. So with your course, it sounds like did you pay to take another course to learn how to do courses or hire a consultant?
Yeah, I did. I paid to do a couple of courses, just kind of when I started with the idea, like, I'm not sure I want to do this. So I did. I didn't pay any of like the high end stuff, but I found people that were like teaching the basics of course creation.
Okay.
Um, and then decided on a platform. I'm using a platform called Podia,
Podia.
Podia, which is a little bit lesser known. It's not Teachable or some of those
Hmm.
others, Udemy, that are they're a little bit more expensive. And I thought I kind of want to just try this on the ground floor and
Yeah.
see if I can do it. See if I enjoy it is the big thing.
That's
If I
important.
get into it and then say this is too much work, it's too much of a chore, and it's not enough bang for my buck, so to
Yeah.
speak,
Yeah.
then I'm not going to do it.
I love that philosophy, being able to always say, am I enjoying this? You know.
Yes. Well, and that's a lesson that being an autism parent has taught me. I have very little free time.
Mm.
So my work, I absolutely love my work. I could work, I mean, my husband will tell you, I could work all the time. It's terrible. But because my work's creative too, right? If I'm creating
Yeah.
courses or I'm making blog posts or um, putting together an interview, like, I love that stuff. It feeds my creativity. And then working with clients one-on-one, love it, groups, like all of that. I feel like it's what I was made to do in life. But I have to be able to balance that with family life at home. And
Hmm.
then my son still lives at home and he needs 24/7 care. So he
Yeah.
needs somebody to be always paying attention to what he's doing and is he keeping himself safe. And some nights we don't sleep. And,
Hmm.
so I've had to build that into my private practice to be able to take care of myself.
Yeah. That's important.
Yeah.
This journey that you're on, I'm really enjoying it. Have you looked at? I don't know if you're already doing this, but I think if you're not, I think you're ready. Have you looked at consulting already?
Yes, I've been
Okay.
doing some consulting.
Awesome.
I've honestly not, speaking of Joe Sanak, I've not done like consulting prices and like consulting packages the way
Hmm.
that he does just yet, because I'm just starting to dabble in it. But I've had professionals that have contacted me that have said, I have this client. Can you consult with me on this client? And
Yeah.
I'll do an hourly rate for it.
Okay. I think did we break up a little bit there, or was that just my
A little
side?
bit. You're back.
Okay, awesome. Sorry.
That's
Um, yeah, listening in, I think there's a lot of clinicians who are maybe just not starting a private practice. They're getting their feet wet, their experience, but so much of what you're doing, like a podcast, there's so many people that are interested in how do I do a podcast, and they're probably
mm,
nervous. And it's great to have someone like you who's able to walk them through, hey, this is how I did it, or course creation, right? You've got that experience now. You can support someone else with it. It's amazing. There's so much that you've done. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know that I'd be very good at teaching someone how to do a podcast, but I can help other clinicians as far as like how to work with a family that has autism, like the clinical side of
Yeah.
stuff. But I feel like if I had to do it again, there's so much more resources out there now than when I started, even 3 years ago when I started the podcast. I had gone to Pat Flynn's website and just
Yes.
watched
I
his
love
YouTube
him.
videos. Yeah, he had free YouTube videos on how to start a podcast. So I did it the way he said to do it, which is probably a lot more complicated than it is to do now, but I've learned it and I don't want to change it.
Hmm.
But if someone's out there that wants to start a podcast, I would highly recommend doing a course of some kind, either Pat Flynn's course or Joe Sanek's course. There's a couple of really good ones out there from people that I really trust.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Janine, it's been awesome having you here. If there are clinicians out there that are interested in your niche or clinicians out there that are looking for consultation, how can they connect with you?
So you can go to puzzlepiececounseling.com or autismblueprint.com. They'll both take you to a place where you can connect with me. And my podcast is on all the major podcast apps, iTunes, Stitcher, all of that.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you here, sharing space with you, sharing life with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Stay healthy.
Yeah, we both need to stay healthy.
Absolutely.